All right. So first off, I wanted to welcome you to Atlanta Tech Village Sylvan. And so we've been, building the Tech Village now for almost 13 years. The first 11 or 12 years was in Buckhead, and now we are excited to have you in our downtown location. So let's see if we get some clicker going. We always love to joke that with all the technology in the world and all the AI and the billions of dollars that are spent, AV is still one of the unknown frontiers of technology. All right, we're in business. So this is a 15-minute presentation, so we're gonna go fast. My background is one of self-taught programmer. In the 8th grade, I started selling apps online. And then I went to college. It was the dot-com boom. Built a bunch of websites, loved it, knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Created a software company, graduated from college in North Carolina, and our biggest customer was based in Atlanta. So I moved down to Atlanta to be in the office of the customer, to be as close to the customer as possible. That company did well, and it led to a number of other ideas. And so I want to share some of the success stories and then some of the ideas going forward as a community. On the founder side, I started a company called Pardot, marketing automation software. Started it in 2007. We sold it in 2012 to what became Salesforce.com. So if you drive through Buckhead, if you drive up Georgia 400 and you look up and you see Salesforce on a beautiful skyscraper, that's where the Pardot office was for 5 years, and that's why Salesforce has continued to make a large investment in Georgia. We had the opportunity to partner with some other tech entrepreneurs. I partnered with a gentleman named Craig Hyde, and we started a company called Rigor. We had a great exit to Splunk, and then Splunk was purchased by Cisco. And so if you drive up the connector, you'll see Cisco has a large presence in Georgia, and part of that is due to the acquisition of Splunk, which acquired Rigor. And then I had the opportunity to partner with another local entrepreneur, a Georgia Tech grad as well, Kyle Porter, and we started a company called SalesLoft, doing sales engagement software. SalesLoft, we raised over $200 million of venture capital, and we had the opportunity to sell the company in 2021 for $2.3 billion, one of the largest exits ever in the state of Georgia for a software company. And so as part of this opportunity of starting companies and partnering with founders, it's also led to the opportunity to invest in a variety of different startups. And so I've personally invested in over 50 startups in the state of Georgia. The most prominent one is a company called Calendly. A University of Georgia grad, Tope Awatana, created the most simple, beautiful way to schedule meetings with each other. And today, Calendly powers over 50 million meetings a year all across the world and was last valued at $3 billion. Tope is one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country and resides right here in Georgia. So after selling Pardot in 2012, I had the opportunity to imagine what was next. And so I decided that I wanted to build one of the largest tech entrepreneurship centers in the United States. Shopped around for a building, looked at West Midtown, Midtown, and Buckhead, and found this beautiful building at the intersection of Piedmont Road and Lenox Road. Right when I walked in, I knew it was the best spot to build a large tech entrepreneurship hub. 100,000 square feet, right at a MARTA station, right at Georgia 400 exit 2, right at 20 restaurants and grocery stores and activities and Path 400. And in the past 13 years, we've supported over 2,000 startups in that one building. So these are startups that are headquartered in Georgia and say the Tech Village is their address of choice. We host over 400 events per year, and we've generated over $10 billion of enterprise value from that one building. A couple months ago, we had one of our prominent startups that was created in the Tech Village was acquired, and the company is called Prize Picks, and they were acquired for almost $2 billion. And so that was another Georgia success story from the Atlanta Tech Village. And so after working on the Tech Village for a decade, one of the most common questions that I received was, when are you going to open the next location? What's next for the Tech Village Buckhead? And so at the time, the real estate market was white hot and commercial office buildings were not priced affordably. But COVID changed all that. And with that COVID change came the opportunity to purchase over 1 million square feet, over 50 historic buildings, and 10 contiguous city blocks in downtown Atlanta. You are sitting in one of our 57 buildings in downtown. And we've embarked on creating the largest startup and innovation district in the United States. And if you take a walk 1 block towards the state capitol, which is less than a 10-minute walk, according to Chairman Jones, you will see dozens of buildings under construction this very second. Scaffolding everywhere, sidewalks torn up. We're getting the neighborhood ready for its grand opening with the World Cup, but it's a grand opening to bring entrepreneurs back to downtown. Downtown Atlanta is the home and the heart of the region, and we're excited to have small businesses and entrepreneurs bring downtown back to life. And so the question is, how do we help the Georgia innovation and technology community? Myself, I've been focused my entire career on innovation and technology in Georgia, specifically the startup side of things. And so, of course, the first thing I did is reached out to a bunch of entrepreneur friends and posed this question. What can we do quickly? What can we do in a capital efficient manner? And what's the highest priority? Sure, there's a million things that we can do, but let's boil it down. What would you recommend? And so idea number one, the first company that I had the opportunity to sell was called Pardot, and we sold it to ExactTarget, which was quickly bought by Salesforce. ExactTarget is based in Indianapolis. In Indiana, they run a program called the Orr Fellowship. Orr was a governor a couple decades ago who was passionate about entrepreneurship and technology. And so they have a state-funded program where the 100 most promising recent college graduates that want to be entrepreneurs but don't have ideas yet, they join local startups and have a cohort program that's facilitated by the state. The best way to think of this would be Leadership Georgia or Teach for America. Cohorts, community partners, investment, and the idea is that we take the 100 most aspiring entrepreneurs that are recent college grads in Georgia, and we build a cohort program called the Kemp Fellows, and we connect the future entrepreneurs with existing entrepreneurs, and we build a pipeline for the next generation of technology and innovation in Georgia. The Kemp Fellows Program. Idea number two, regional robotics labs. One of the areas that I'm really excited about is robotics, AI, advanced manufacturing. Georgia has a long history on the manufacturing front. Georgia has a strong base in aerospace and defense, but there's an area that is growing quietly and needs a lot more attention, and that is robotics. With our university system, we have incredible robotics and mechanical engineering programs. We have a bunch of maker spaces at our campuses. Georgia State has several, Georgia Tech has several, UGA has several, and on. But we don't have a network of commercial grade maker spaces for entrepreneurs inventing the next generation of technology in Georgia. And so playing off the different population centers, playing off the manufacturing and the workforce development, I believe building a network of robotics labs and the state of Georgia putting a stake in the ground that robotics is an area that we care about and we want to inspire and make it a bedrock of what we do from an economic development perspective. We're putting our money where our mouth is here in South Downtown. We're building out a 35,000 square foot robotics lab on Broad Street at MLK, 1 block away from the 5 Points MARTA station. And so we're gonna have that ready at the end of next year, the largest commercial, professional grade robotics lab in Georgia, right in the founding heart of downtown. Idea number 3, in several states, including Oklahoma and Mississippi, if you invest in startups in your state, you don't pay any state capital gains on the proceeds from the state headquartered startups. And so it's a simple idea. We want to encourage Georgians to invest in Georgians' companies. And so from a policy point of view, let's reduce the friction, let's entice the investors. And so no state capital gains taxes on in-state tech investments is an obvious choice. Other states have already done it, and we should do the same. Idea number 4. Somebody should invent a better clicker. I'll fund it. Call in the IT guy. This part right here.
Thank you. While we're waiting on that, quick question about idea number 3. So I know there was an angel investor tax credit that was maybe
There was.
5 years
Mhm.
ago. So
It didn't work. It wasn't successful.
oh, I know it.
Mhm.
About 2% of the allocated funds were
Mhm.
used, but there was some other issues around why it didn't work. But my question is, the capital gains tax versus the angel investor tax credit, do you prefer one or over the other, or do you think with reclamations, the angel investor tax credit can work in conjunction with the state?
It can absolutely work. And it's been very successful in other states. So yeah, I'm a fan of it. I didn't include it just because I know it's already under discussion.
Thank you.
All right, idea number 4 while we're waiting for the slides. Idea number 4 is a little more exotic. You ready to get outside your comfort zone? Idea number 4 is outcome-based incentives for entrepreneurs. So let me give you an example. There's quite the excitement around college admissions for high school seniors across the country right now, especially in the state of Georgia. Imagine having a program where if your son or daughter met the requirements, say the middle 50% or more on test scores and GPA, they were guaranteed admittance to Georgia or Georgia Tech. What would that be worth to economic development? And so the example is the state has opportunity zone tax credits. So $3,500 a year if you create jobs of a certain salary in certain geographic areas. Imagine a state program, again, got to get a little exotic here. Imagine a state program that if as an entrepreneur you created 100 jobs or more in an opportunity zone in the state, and your son or daughter had 50% or higher GPA average and test score average at Georgia Tech or Georgia, you were guaranteed admittance, right? It doesn't cost any money. The power of getting your son or daughter into a flagship institution is incredibly high, and you better believe there's a lot of Bulldogs and Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets out there that this would actually motivate them. So again, something that's outside the norm, something to consider and think about. In a similar vein, there's a lot of discussion right now on the state income tax in Georgia. And so idea 4B would be tying investment in the state with state income tax abatement. So as an example, if you're an entrepreneur and your company raises and invests $100 million in the state of Georgia in an area or industry of high priority, then you as the founder don't have to pay state income tax for 3 years. So again, just ideas that are outside the bubble. I haven't found these examples in other states, but just brainstorming. We want workforce development, we want economic development, we want jobs, good jobs created in the state. Let's find the things that people complain about. They complain about their kids getting into the flagship state universities, and they complain about paying state income tax. I know these are high-class problems to have, but these are the types of conversations that occur in the tech entrepreneur community. And finally, idea number 5, to wrap it up, I believe Georgia has all the ingredients to be a top 10 tech innovation state. I believe one of the number one things holding us back is housing production. If I could wave a magic wand and do one thing to promote innovation in the state, I would create 100,000 new housing units on the Atlanta Beltline. 100,000 new housing units on the Atlanta Beltline will do more for innovation and technology in the state of Georgia than anything else I can possibly think of. And so I wanted to share those ideas. Ideas from robotics, ideas from creative ways to incentivize entrepreneurs, ideas around helping our next generation of college graduates work for startups in a cohort so that they're inspired and build the skills to create their own companies. And finally, housing, housing, housing. And those are my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I love the ideas, so I sure do appreciate that. But members of the committee, have any questions?
I have two.
No, please, Representative Kendrick.
My first question was around the idea of the one fellows. So the matching when the placement of the Georgia startup, how do you envision, I guess, if they get compensation from the Georgia startups or where?
They would be paid by the startups. You could think of it as a leadership development track. So imagine if you're working for a bank or GE or any of these large companies, what they do is you have your normal job, but then they have leadership development. And so it's guest speakers and it's dinners and it's time with executives in the area. The same idea, the startup would pay their salary, but the organization would facilitate meeting with other entrepreneurs and dinners. And have you gone through Leadership Georgia or Leadership Atlanta? And so they have these cohorts that spend a lot of time together around other executives and successful leaders. And it's really a tight-knit group. Mm-mm.
And my last question is on the housing idea. I like to be clear about
Yes.
housing. Do you think housing like in the same price range as the Atlanta Beltline, or you're thinking more like?
From a state point of view, the simplest place to start would be the reforms around permitting, reforms around fees, reforms around what's allowed to be built, right? If I could wave a magic wand within a half mile of the Beltline and transit, MARTA, bus rapid transit, different types of stations, by right, you would be able to build certain density of housing. You wouldn't have to go through all this zoning reform. By right, the state would say, you can go build a 4-story XYZ unit apartment within a half mile of a MARTA station, and you don't have to go through all the hoops that currently exist.
Representative Kendrick, does that answer all your questions? All right,
Mm-hmm.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for your great presentation. I have 3 questions, 2 quick, 1 is for each. The first one is, my understanding of state capital gains taxes, we just tax it at about
Correct.
Right. And so do you have, and we can find this out if you don't, I like that idea a lot, and I was wondering if you had done any calculations on how much that would potentially cost the city. Okay.
It's a strange one because it's episodic,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So you might have a big exit, like a sales loft, and then you pay a bunch of tax, and then you might go a bunch of years and not have a big exit.
Right, we have to do some kind of average.
Some, yeah, yeah.
I like that.
An anecdote on that one.
Mr. Cummings, we're getting, there's a bunch of people watching, and I guess we're having some IT issues. People can't hear any of us asking, and they can't hear your answers.
Okay.
So if it's okay, can we pause, Representative Evans, on your question, because I think they're good questions. People want to hear the questions and they want to hear the answer. Can we give IT, you need 5, 10? Can we take a 5-minute break, everyone?
Yeah.
Please make it 5, and let's come back in 5, and let's look that we got this up. I just don't want people to miss, because contemporaneously, these are really good questions that revolve around bantering back and forth and not having it right out of the So let's take 5, and let's come back at around 10:40.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great.
Sorry about that.
All right, we are back on. We are going to go to an old school solution, which is called sharing one microphone. And we are ready when you are.
Thank you. Do I need to go back and do my other question?
Please.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
And I'll just go ahead and repeat the answer because I know it, and then we'll send it back. So my question was with regard to the idea about waiving the state capital gains tax for in-state investments, investment in Georgia-based companies. And I was sharing my understanding that's taxed like at the ordinary income tax rate in Georgia. That was confirmed, and then I was asking if there was an estimate of those numbers, and we don't have those, and we acknowledge that they are episodic, and so we would probably need to look at some 5 to 10 year average to find out what the price tag would be to the state. But I commit and will lean on the chairman to help me get perhaps a fiscal note, because as an ordinary, lowly member of the minority, my deadline to request fiscal notes has passed. My second question is, I just want to make sure I was understanding correctly on the idea about if you create jobs and then and then there's a certain score and grade point average that you would gain access. And I wanted to make sure to certain colleges, I was going to make sure that's the parents creating the job. And so he wants to pass this back he's agreeing with me. And this is the question where I'll give the mic to you. And this is a little bit beyond the original scope of this committee, but I think it's crucial. You bring up housing. Housing is crucial to everything. Creating more housing is crucial to everything. And you have on your slides, one of the things that we've got to deal with is zoning and building codes and permitting and all of that. And I would love to know if you have like a top 2 to 3 ideas that you would give us as legislators that we could try to make a reality, because I agree that it's stifling.
I love this topic. So a few examples. One, in New York City, by right, if you're a licensed architect, you can self-permit up to 50,000 square feet of renovation. So this building that we're sitting in right now, merged with the building next door, is 50,000 square feet. So if you're in New York City and you're a licensed architect, you can submit the plans to do the renovation and you can permit it yourself. Up to 50,000 feet, you have to have a certain level of bonding, you have to have a certain license. But imagine where the permitting process isn't actually going to get a permit. It's you are licensed, and so you can do a 50,000 square foot commercial interior renovation because you're a licensed architect. The permit side, you still have to get the certificate of inspection and occupancy, but the permit side, you can just start working. So that would be one example, and that's more on the commercial, the fit out side. Another one that I think is a no-brainer is the by right housing, gentle density within a half mile of a transit stop or a trail. And so the trail would be like the Beltline or Path 400 or the Greenway Trail. And so transit stop or trail, by right housing, gentle density. So those are the 2 that I would start. Self-performing the permit, and then by right when you're proximate to major infrastructure that already has things that are not car-oriented for transportation. Mm-hmm.
All right. If it's okay, Mr. Cummings, I'm just going to give you my question, so then that way we can just hand the mic to you. Is that all right? Okay. Love the idea of the fellow program. Are you thinking that's like almost like an entrepreneurial in residence program? Because that's what it felt like when you presented it. And so if you could just comment to that, I sure would appreciate it. Secondly, on the robotics question, we're moving a lot of effort into ag tech. And we have a grand farm down in Perry. Love to hear your opinion in terms of what you see at ATV on ag tech. And maybe you don't see a lot on ag tech. Maybe you do, or maybe you give. Okay, well, we'd love to hear your thoughts on ag tech if you don't mind. Third, on the capital gains, you and I have discussed offline the 1202 exception at the federal level, and just maybe your opinion on that in terms of it applying to the state. You're like, Todd, I didn't know it was going to be this many questions. I apologize. Finally, the last one on the housing. I'm a big fan of supply and demand, especially if we get more supply. And I think you're hitting with Representative Evans the points on permitting and everything. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the 3D printing of housing, if that would be okay. So hopefully you got all those questions. I'm going to hand the mic over to you. And David, thank you very much for being the runner.
All right, so question one about the Kemp Fellows idea. So an entrepreneur in residence is an entrepreneur that goes and hangs out at a big company or a venture capital, private equity firm. And this idea for the Kemp Fellows is around cohorts of recent college grads that want to be entrepreneurs. They want to spend time around other people who do want to be entrepreneurs, but then they want to be mentored by active entrepreneurs. So their day job would be working at a startup. And so just like an entrepreneur in residence or a Teach for America. So Teach for America gives you a bunch of continuing education and peer groups and cohorts, and then you go into a city and you teach. Same idea, cohorts, peer groups, continuing education, and you go work for entrepreneurs, but then you have this support group around you that wants to start companies as well. Question number two, robotics and ag tech, Perry, Georgia. In the Atlanta Tech Village, one of our more successful robotics companies is a company called Greensy. So Greensy.com makes large commercial outdoor autonomous lawnmowers. So imagine a lawnmower that has a blade that's 5 feet across and perfectly stripes the football field and the baseball field and the soccer field and the golf courses and the parks and the turf farms with centimeter level accuracy. So taking the technology that was developed for self-driving cars and apply large outdoor commercial equipment. And so that's one that came out of the Tech Village, has customers across the country. Georgia Southern is a customer. Many airports, many municipalities across the country are customers. And it is robotic technology that was built right here in Georgia, and it fits perfectly on the ag tech front. Question number three was about 1202 QSBS. And so qualified small business stock is an important part of the tech entrepreneurship ecosystem. Qualified small business stock is if you invest in a company with a valuation below 50 million before, now it's 75 million, and it is a qualified business. So it's a software company, a hardware company. If you're doing real estate development or accounting or other more mainstream industries, it does not count. But if you are in a qualified industry like high tech and you invest in a C Corp, not an LLC, and you hold for 5 or more years, you pay no capital gains up to your first $10 million of proceeds. The state of Georgia does follow the federal code as well. So in effect, there already is a little bit of the in-state no capital gains for investing in Georgia startups. And so QSBS is only applicable to C Corps. Most of the startups that I know are LLCs for a variety of reasons. And so QSBS does not apply to them. That could be an example of an area that Georgia could do for in-state capital gains and make it applicable like QSBS, but to do it to LLCs in addition to C Corps. And so, Chairman Jones, question number 4 was what? Yes, so the International Building Code, the IBC, recently changed some of their regulations earlier this year around load-bearing and structural elements, and 3D printing of houses is something that has already taken place in other countries and other cities in the United States. And there's tremendous opportunity to build more housing basically using robots. It's more of an advanced manufacturing technique and less of a robots technique right now, but the future is close for it to be a robots technique as well. And so anything that we can do to build housing, including prefab, offsite, modular construction, 3D printing of houses, I think we should explore all of them. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to move on to our second speaker. I would like to call up Mr. Elstock. If you're ready to go, we're ready to have you. We sure do appreciate you starting with us. And do you have any slides, sir? Okay. We're going to go ahead and get our fingers crossed for that. And I'm going to go ahead and hand you the hot mic.
I can present on Tim's, it's fine. We're friends. This is true. This is true. Fair enough.
We really struggle through this time of year.
Hat entrepreneurship. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to share Rowan with the committee and also to speak directly to a few specific recommendations around venture investment, what this means for Georgia. As a brief introduction, Mason Elstock, I'm president and CEO of the Rowan Foundation. I came to Georgia from Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, where I served as the chief operating officer for a number of years. And if you're familiar with RTP, then there'll be some similarities around what Rowan is and how we are organized and governed. To provide a brief introduction to Rowan, Rowan is a 501c4 not-for-profit. We own 2,000 acres in Gwinnett County, about halfway between Athens, Atlanta, and Gainesville. And we have this real estate that is really about much more than real estate. It's about building a community over the next 30 plus years of 22 million square feet that is a neutral convening point for a variety of industries, a variety of partners, a variety of higher education institutions, and ultimately creating a workforce hub that will have over 100,000 jobs built out over the decades ahead. And ultimately what that means for Georgia, not just Gwinnett County, not just Metro Atlanta, but for Georgia, is over $11 billion in economic output that will occur within the 2,000 acres that Rowan owns. So where is Rowan? Not everybody has been there. We were speaking earlier about finding time to come out for a visit. So you see our logo at the center of what we aptly named the Rowan region. And it is, again, at the center of Gainesville, Athens, and Atlanta. You can see the amazing higher education institutions that surround Rowan. And we had a big challenge early on when we kicked off the project in 2020, and that was to bring definition to an area that brought together these different MSAs that historically had not jointly pursued large-scale companies in economic development and bringing them to Georgia. So we worked with UGA's Carl Vinson Institute of Government to analyze the workforce trends, the employment trends, the graduation trends that are impacting the Rowan region, and then turning that data into a recruitment strategy to bring people to Rowan. Within that area, there's a tremendous amount of growth. 43% of the growth in Georgia's population alone over the next 25 years will occur within the Rowan region. 46% of the growth in the prime working age between now and 2028 will occur within the Rowan region. And it's a place where people love to come. Once they're there, there's an 85% chance that they're not going anywhere. So this is a place where companies, graduates, communities are growing and thriving, and there's a basis of people that they could live in a downtown community, they could have a horse farm, they could be in Atlanta and have a similar commute to the Rowan site. We have amazing partners as a part of our board of directors. So we've got a board of 11 people. 5 of those are higher education institutions. 2 of them are here represented today. I have Dr. Deb Bruner, the Executive Vice President of Research from Emory University, serves on our board. And we have Donald Kirkland, who I think is still here, or he may have stepped out, but he's here representing Bert Reeves from Georgia Tech. We also have UGA, Spelman College, and Georgia Gwinnett College on our board of directors. And they are matched up with industry executives in agriculture, life science, real estate, all as a part of Rowan's governing body. And then we have amazing economic development partners at the state, Georgia Power, Gwinnett County itself, and creating this global competitive strategy and how we connect from entrepreneurship and the amazing assets that are within Metro Atlanta and across Georgia, and leveraging those into growth strategies that connect to agriculture, medicine, and the environment. These are the programmatic drivers that really establish Rowan, along with the enabling technologies, things like robotics, AI, sensor technologies, advanced manufacturing, that really span and intersect these large verticals of agriculture, medicine, and the environment. The takeaway here around connectivity and momentum is not just our geographic location, but because of our governance structure and the amazing institutions that we are partnering with, we serve really as this neutral convening body. So when we think about startups coming out of Tech Square, out of Science Square, out of work that Emory has underway, out of activities that are going on in Athens, Rowan's serving as an investor and partner that comes alongside those institutions, particularly where they intersect and overlap on those verticals, to spin out new companies. Many times companies are investing in, startups are being launched in the gray areas in between industries. It's where the people connect in new ways around new ideas and new workforce trends that we really want to lean into and invest. If you get to come out to the site, we'd love to have you. There's about $32 million in infrastructure that we just completed, a $15 million convergence center that we're going to break ground on early next year, and really building a global brand that competes with places like Research Triangle Park, a strong governance public-private partnership with Gwinnett County, and ongoing very active work with the State Economic Development Office and our economic development partners to recruit those companies to the state. Moving on to some specific comments around how this committee, how the state can continue to invest in startups. So this is a really important topic for us, because the investments that we make with our partners like GRA, like the University System of Georgia, are really planting seeds that we can cultivate as a connected community over the years ahead in order to keep those folks here in the state. When we look at building a network of partners, that strategic collaboration that goes from the technical college system to the university system is really critical for us to invest in, for us to sustain, in order to ensure that when these people graduate, we have intellectual property, we have venture capital that's being invested, that those folks stay here as a part of our growth. We're unmatched in what Georgia can bring to the table. Gwinnett County's investment in Rowan, the state's support for GRA, and the excellence of our higher education institutions give Georgia the platform that many states would envy. Georgia Tech and Emory now generate over $2 billion in research annually, placing Atlanta among only 6 metro cities in the entire nation, with 2 universities above the $1 billion research threshold. At the same time, Rowan is one of only 3 multi-university innovation districts in the United States, with over 2,000 acres capable of supporting the millions of square feet of development. Together, these assets position Georgia to do something no other southeastern state has done at scale, and that's to become a national destination for life sciences, commercialization, and investment. So why does this matter? First, Georgia's universities produce high-value intellectual property. Investors follow quality IP. We know this. David shared this before. And Georgia institutions generate globally competitive innovations in dozens of fields. When investors see research at this scale, they will see a pipeline of companies worth backing. Second, we have infrastructure that de-risks investments. GRA's commercialization, Georgia Tech's Science Square, and Rowan's significant real estate holdings with access to diverse talent pipelines reduces risk for rapidly scaling technologies. This is exactly what venture capital firms look for before deploying capital. And third, Rowan's vision is to create a continuity of community, spanning Georgia's higher education institutions, innovation assets, and people, with a shared understanding of what we can achieve together through sustained efforts. But it's a competitive landscape. We have to be honest about where we stand nationally. Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Texas have made massive investments in translational research, place-based innovation districts, and workforce infrastructure. They actively court federal grants and corporate R&D, and they speak with a unified statewide strategy. Georgia has the same ingredients, but we need more speed, scale, and strategic alignment to remain competitive. We already have a strong foundation of people, places, and programs to build on. The question is how we connect and coordinate our efforts to reach new heights. So we have six brief recommendations for the committee to advance and consider. The first is considering focusing Georgia's investment funds specifically on IP development at Georgia institutions to attract investors and require that that IP is physically commercialized in the state. David and I did not compare notes before he spoke, but this idea of using state dollars and investing state funds, tax dollars, into companies that are in these innovation locations across Georgia and allowing for some tax benefit or job accruing that keeps them here and allows for a tax benefit for those investors and not having them go to the Northeast or West Coast, I think is a critical point and pretty clear and at least simple to understand. Implementation takes a bit more work. Second is unite Rowan, GRA, and the Georgia Department of Economic Development and our universities as an integrated ecosystem and statewide commercialization engine. How can we leverage our individual strengths and resources and real estate and programs and partnerships in ways that can compound and serve as a multiplier over the years ahead? Third, expand the workforce programs targeting biomanufacturing, clinical research, and advanced technologies, because companies choose states where they can hire talent on day one, but they also want the confident to have a sustained talent pipeline for the many years ahead. The large companies that Rowan is speaking to that will invest hundreds of millions of dollars and create hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, they absolutely want to know in the Rowan region who they can hire when they have a groundbreaking. But even more so, they want to make sure that that same talent is being sustained and continually thinking about the future of that industry to be competitive. Number four, position ourselves aggressively for federal dollars. The next decade will have unprecedented federal funding for life sciences, advanced manufacturing, and biosystems engineering. So we must be aligned and prepared to compete. And number five, directly support access for capital in life sciences entrepreneurs through incentives that reward commercialization, public-private venture partnerships, and expanded translational research support. And finally, number six, strengthen research to industry investments in infrastructure and programs that move discoveries from campus labs into companies located in Georgia. In closing, Georgia has the talent, we have the institutions, we have the infrastructure and innovation assets needed to become the Southeast anchor for research commercialization. We have the foundation. We've made the right investments in key building blocks. And by advancing these recommendations, we can create a globally competitive network that delivers high-wage jobs, attracts investment, and ensures that Georgia's research-focused entrepreneurs have access to capital to build and scale companies right here at home. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your comments. I did notice that your location is a tad bit closer to Georgia State and Georgia Tech than UGA, so good placement. Just three quick questions. On number two, the align the ecosystem, and again, I'll give you the mic. I'll do the three questions and give you the mic. Has there ever been a conversation around effectively the shared IP of core functions? So hypothetically, 5-7 years ago, if Tesla had started to share the idea of the vision, which is, of course, how they're running AV versus what we're seeing with some of the others that are using LiDAR, maybe that core technology, meaning vision, would have been shared across the board with maybe 5, 6, 10 companies. And then, of course, from there, they can differentiate themselves with additional IP. I'm just wondering, around aligning the ecosystem, is there a way for that to occur? On number three, expanding the workforce programs, I'm going to digress for 60 seconds, I promise, but I come to a point. I'm on 4 boards. I'm fortunate to be without a day job, so that's a good thing. But I am on 4 boards, and I asked one of our companies that was going to be manufacturing about 500,000 units. I said, do me a favor. I know you're going to Texas and California to get bids. Would you mind at least giving the state of Georgia a chance, since I am a representative here? And they did. And what was interesting is Texas came in on a per unit basis at X. California came in around 1.X. Georgia came in at 22X. I want to say that one more time, 22X. So we all, of course, assumed that the Georgia company had made a mistake in the assumptions, because it's one thing to be off by 80% like California was, but to be off by literally orders of magnitude just didn't seem to make sense. Well, we found out Texas and California had already moved over to 3D printing, and they were just doing rapid accretive manufacturing. Georgia was still doing what could best be described as basically injection molding. And so the question I have, so now that you have the context of the question I have on number 3 is there a program that Rowan could lead that would help to, I'll say, our 3rd industrial revolution type companies transition into the 5th industrial revolution? I appreciate the new investment that wants to be made in biosciences, nanotechnologies, and things like that. God bless America. But I don't want my current companies that have been in business for decades to be left behind. If hopefully that makes sense. Love to hear your opinion. And then last but not least, number 5, there's a huge conversation happening right now on growth capital. And I'm not sure where Rowan plays into that or not. If you do, love to just hear a couple comments in your mind around growth capital. Let me give you a definition of growth capital. As we know, not every company makes it to 10 to 15 million in ARR, but those that do are typically, I'll say, they're sucking down a lot of capital to basically feed the monster, feed the growth. Getting capital, that type of capital, tends to be a little more difficult in our state than, say, the Research Triangle, Austin, California, etc. Love to hear if Rowan plays a role in that, and if they do, what that is. So thank you.
Thank you. So for the first question, the core functions, it's interesting because having shared facilities, shared faculty, and developing shared IP is a challenge that we had in North Carolina. A lot of states have. There's different programs. GRA has some amazing work, to support eminent scholars, research equipment. I think there's absolutely a need in that space because there's a lot of duplication around intellectual property that is developed and maybe at one institution and then there's some over somewhere else. Would have a much better compounding return on our investment if there was a way to create a baseline shared ownership of core IP that can be distributed based on those that are able to contribute. So I think that is a need. I think Rowan, again, as an independent 501c4, we're not government. We work closely with government. We're not a university or a college, but we work very closely with our universities and colleges and have those folks on our board. So I would love to see Rowan serve in that capacity as a neutral convener and maybe the tip of a spear where anybody that comes to Rowan has a hand on the steering wheel towards things like core IP that can be secured, and then allow the people that are doing the work, the researchers, students, faculty, startups, investors, that they are all a part of this. I think it's just going on.
That's okay. The 3 of us can scream.
Hello.
All right. Try it again. So I think that's a key part, and a lot of places are wrestling through that, and I think we need to do that because there's a lot of wasted energy, time, and money and talent where there's base technology that we can lean into. It can be, pre-competitive if it's with industry. I think I would love to have Rowan serve in that role. Workforce programs, you specifically remind me again around workforce, what you were. Yeah. So great question. I mean, again, I would see us partnering locally with, we have this amazing organization, the Executive Advisory Council for Georgia. We've got Georgia Power. We have local communities, Keith down at, Burt Brantley down in Savannah, the ports involved. Answering and asking those questions is is key. And how do we connect with those companies that have called Georgia home to make sure that they're not left behind, while also recognizing we are recruiting companies that may have an interest in acquisition or partnership or be a customer for those companies that are here, and ensuring there's some connectivity. Is that something we can support through the local chambers of commerce that probably have local partnerships or other networks with those businesses that have been in Georgia? I would see us more as an activator of those relationships, and then maybe we can contribute capital or programmatic partnerships to help make sure that they're brought along and are aware of business opportunities and growth and scaling opportunities in order to be. All right, and last one around capital and life sciences and entrepreneurs and scaling growth capital. There again, I say to our team all the time, do what we do best and partner for the rest. Rowan had this in Research Triangle Park with Duke, had a venture capital arm and growth capital, but we involved with the scaling up of space. So we had a lot of real estate. There were a lot of companies that started in amazing space like this or Science Square. When they were acquired or they got to a certain job count or they had a certain type of advanced manufacturing need to growth and attract and keep growth capital, they didn't have a place to go. So many times they were going to the West Coast, they were going to the Northeast. So RTP's role, and what I could see Rowan's role being, is providing a low cost of capital for space, particularly in life sciences, ag tech, innovation, that needs some room, right? That may not be in the urban core, but we want to keep a continuity of community for them to have those relationships that they've grown as they launched, as they hit that growth stage, and then be able to remain in the state. And then partner with the people that can attract and deploy that capital. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For our anchor leg, Tim, are you going solo or is? Okay, perfect. Do you want to go ahead and take the lead, and then you'll introduce Justin at the right time? All right, it's all yours.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Georgia Research Alliance, what we do, how we do it, and the value to the state of Georgia. Thank you, David, for hosting us here today. So as the slides are pulling up, just like to give a brief overview. Let's see here, is this gonna work? Yeah, there we go. So what does GRA do? Our mission is really to drive greater impact based upon university research, innovation, and entrepreneurship to benefit our state and even well beyond our state throughout the nation and beyond. And we really do this with the goal of benefiting everyday lives of Georgians in particular. So there's a tremendous amount of brilliance, professors, research that are going on every single day throughout our universities. But to make sure that doesn't just manifest itself in terms of publications and additional grants coming in, those are absolutely necessary and critical, but that it actually allows for ideas to move forward, to have real world impact beyond the walls of the university. And so that's really what motivates us, drives us, and is at the core of what Georgia Research Alliance does. I'd like to digress just very briefly to our roots, because I think our roots are very relevant to the overall conversation here. Georgia Research Alliance was founded in 1990, but I want to tell you how and why we were founded. It was actually due to, in the mid-1980s, a large microelectronics corporation was looking at where to set up headquarters, and they had narrowed it down to Austin, Texas, and Atlanta. They ended up choosing Austin, went there, and numerous business leaders here in Georgia wanted to understand why that decision was made. So they had a debrief afterwards with the search firm, and they found out that they just really did not see an integration between the universities interacting with the state, they wouldn't partnering with each other, so they saw a lot of silos that they didn't exactly see in Austin. And so what was really amazing in the foresight of the individuals, largely led by the business leaders here in the state, and you see some of them here, Tom Cousins, Larry Gellerstadt, to come up with a model where you can break down these silos and really integrate the business community, the state government, and the universities, the horsepower of the universities with a lot of these ideas, so that you can do something big, so that you can start winning a lot of these awards that are available, whether it's federal or private, and start having impact, greater impact in your state. So GRA was founded 1990, 501c3, nonprofit, and off to the races. So how does GRA work? Well, it's really three legs of the stool, if you will. Talent recruitment. First and foremost, recruiting top-notch talent into the state of Georgia, into the universities within the state of Georgia. Our flagship program is recruiting what we call eminent scholars. These are full professors that are internationally renowned in their specific fields. Recruit them into a Georgia university, then begin to enable them with cutting-edge equipment and instrumentation so that they can not only think of the most brilliant ideas and experiments that need to be done, but then actually do it with cutting-edge equipment. And then finally, growing companies, such that when you make those discoveries, again, that doesn't just manifest itself in terms of a publication, rinse and repeat. That those ideas that are coming forward, now that there's evidence of them, start to move them forward such that you can have IP, which we've already heard about. That IP can then turn into a spin-out company or license to an existing Georgia company that are going to set roots in Georgia, that are going to help to support the economic development of Georgia as well as the workforce development of Georgia. I'd like to just share as we go through these kind of pillars, talent recruitment, just one of the most recent examples, we have many of them, is a recruitment of a GRA eminent scholar in precision agriculture. We just heard about Perry, Georgia, Grand Farm. We just very recently recruited a GRA eminent scholar who's a leader in agricultural sensors. So bringing all of the work that he does, now he's recruited to the University of Georgia and a GRA eminent scholar. So this model has proven itself in terms of the talent recruitment. We now have over 80 of these eminent scholars throughout the Georgia universities. And it spans the breadth of research from agriculture to technology to life sciences. So again, we work in close partnership with the universities to do that. So just a little bit in terms of GRA being a true alliance. Again, back to those roots, it started as this partnership between the state, the business community, and the universities to work collectively. So telling you about the talent recruitment piece. To recruit that talent, it's not just a title. This is an amazing title, a GRA eminent scholar, but there's actually an endowment that exists to help recruit them, to help sweeten the pot, to make sure that they can come to Georgia and Georgia universities. Well, that endowment exists as a 50-50 partnership between state funds as well as university funds that are privately raised to create a corpus endowment which is evergreen. That endowment lives on, and the proceeds on that endowment help to fuel the research and move it forward. So a really brilliant model all the way back, going back to the origin, that is paying dividends today with many of these endowments sitting throughout all of our institutions. I've already told you about the pillars and how we work. I would just also reference the member universities. We have currently 8 member universities within GRA, 4 publics and 4 privates. While the talent recruitment and those eminent scholars exist within these member 8 institutions, as well as the infrastructure equipment funds go to those 8 institutions, supporting company growth, that IP, the grants that go to start to de-risk technologies and give key value inflection, that is available and accessible to universities beyond just these. And that's something which you're going to hear more about momentarily. I'd just like to say we have a small and nimble team. And again, we work throughout the state, throughout the universities, throughout the business community to really try to accelerate the innovation and entrepreneurship to have real world impact. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Justin Burns.
Great. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, members of the committee, for having us. I'm really excited to be here to tell you what we're doing at GRA. So my background, I'm a scientist by training. I grew up here in Georgia, went to Brookwood High School in Gwinnett County, went and did both my degrees at Georgia Tech. I left, went to DC for a little bit, worked for the US Navy, came back, wanted to make sure that I could contribute back here where I grew up. So I worked at Emory for a little while, left and joined a venture fund based primarily in Boston, but lived here the whole time. And then the opportunity came up for me to join GRA and to take all of that, sort of what I did in a career arc, and deploy that here in Georgia. And so I was fortunate to join GRA, and now I lead our innovation and entrepreneurship team, which I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. So we at GRA use state resources to help guide faculty entrepreneurs on their journey to take really the discoveries and inventions that they may make at the universities to answer unmet needs here in the market. And so the graphics you see here are intentional. So we have agriculture, we have high tech into forms of software, hardware, and we also have life science depicted here as sort of a pharma nomenclature. But we know that it takes more than just an idea to get things out and make real impact. And so we like to say that we provide resources and guidance to address the ideas and concepts that faculty come up with in their labs, all the way through what they do in terms of invention, protecting IP, making sure that they have some defensibility, all the way into getting that into what actually can enter the market. So GRA provides grants and loans out to startup companies and projects, and we do this in a very milestone-driven and de-risking strategy. We want to make sure that the founders and the faculty are looking at this in terms of what can this do to unlock additional capital, and what can this do to actually make impact. Science for science's sake is great, but we are focused on translation. And so we provide translational grants to researchers at the university in a milestone approach. So we ask them, what can you do? How is this going to de-risk the technology so other people like to see it and will actually invest additional capital? We want to motivate the founders to think of this as a first sort of industry-grade funding, but with a friendly face. Beyond our translational grants that go to the universities, we actually also provide commercialization loans. So these are loans that actually go to the startup companies with the idea that this is a pathway for capital to help them get off the ground. We think of this as a pathway to first revenue, a pathway to first financing. And both of these things are provided at what we see as critical points in time. We serve a really unmet need here in the state, which is these are early, these are risky technologies, and there's no other funding mechanism available to fund these types of projects or these types of companies at the time that they're getting off the ground. So I'll use this continuum here as I talk about how we do what we do. So think of this as a scale that we can look at in terms of grants to the university and loans to the company, as I just mentioned. But we want to see projects at their earliest conception. Maybe the faculty member has an early signal. Maybe they've seen something that came up through their basic science grants, but says, hey, maybe this can really be something that moves out to patients. How do I get there? We know that basic science grants don't often fund the translational component of what goes outside the university. The anecdote I always use is you can prove things out or cure cancer in a mouse and many times over in the lab, but what really matters is getting it out to patients. And so we're here to look at those very early projects and what we call our Technology Opportunity and Assessment Program. And then we move that into commercialization exploration. So once we prove that there's something there, we want to make sure that those projects can get the actual data they need to help strengthen the IP, to strengthen the business case, and move that from the bench to the market. Once the company is formed, we also want to catalyze that and provide that additional early stage capital in the form of a commercialization loan to the company so that the business can really get off the ground. That's sort of the earliest and friendliest capital that can go into that company. Just to give you a quick vignette over the past 10 years, GRA's deployed close to $35 million. You can see the breakdown here of the number of grants and number of loans we did. It's over 200 projects and over 1,200 jobs created. Just in fiscal year 2024, companies supported by GRA, either through their grants or through the loans, have raised $140 million in private investment capital, and those companies have generated over $190 million in revenue. I want to highlight quickly what we've done to help Georgia sort of grow in its university research and development and how we're beating our peers. And so just in the past 10 years or so, Georgia has moved from a rank in number 12 up to number 8. So we have North Carolina and Massachusetts, which were alluded to earlier, well within our sights. And so continued state investment will help us catalyze that and hopefully overtake our neighbors and peer institutions. So I want to talk a little bit about how we do what we do. So the GRA grants are designed, again, to sort of be this early proof of concept funding. We want to take technologies and founders who are entrepreneurial in spirit, maybe they have an early signal, and we want to help catalyze really proving if there's a there, right? And so we want to understand what key piece of data or what experiment is missing from what you can do on the basic science side to help this move out of the university. We want to understand why the technology is better. Why is it faster, cheaper, or stronger? We often ask faculty, what's out there in the market? What are you comparing against? Why would somebody buy this? So we want to encourage faculty to think this way, not just to sort of understand the basic science principles that go into their technology. We also want to make sure that they understand who is the customer, what's on the market, who's going to buy this? Is the customer a hospital system? Is the customer a farm? We want to understand those types of things and help them understand so that that way we really can demonstrate that there's market pull for the technologies rather than us building something and hoping that those others will come. As we move into phase 2, we think of this again as commercialization exploration. So this is what key pieces of data or experiments needed to move it closer to market. So this might be something along the lines of, where do you get your next funding? We know that GRA is supported by the state and we support things at a very early level, but many projects require that external capital and that next stage of funding to really get momentum. We also want to understand what exists to keep you from getting onto the market. What hurdles are out there? Is it regulatory? Is there market pressure? Is there an incumbent that's really out there and is going to prevent you from getting onto the market? And so as we fund these programs, we want faculty to be thinking about this. And ideally, at the end of our phase 2, we want this company to come out of it, come out of the university, license the technology, and be off to the races, either raising capital or generating revenue. As we move into the company scale-up, the GRA commercialization loans are there really to see what activities can get you to your next fundraise or again to revenue generation. GRA is very unique in that we are completely agnostic in terms of technology vertical. As one of my late colleagues said, we do everything from aerospace to zebrafish. So whether it's hardware, it's software, we have biotech, we have diagnostics, we have precision agriculture. I have a project that sorts onions in Vidalia, Georgia, based on AI imaging. We have projects that are looking at early detection of Alzheimer's. So we really do it all. Our goal is to make sure that we understand that and how those companies can get out there and raise revenue or generate revenue and raise next funds. We also want to sort of understand what can we do to support you versus what we can do to leverage additional capital. So any venture capitalists or other investors that are local and those that are beyond the Atlanta ecosystem, how can we make sure that the technologies and projects coming out of the GRA programs are really grown up? We want Boston and San Francisco to look at GRA projects just like they would look at projects in their own ecosystems. To give you another snapshot, just in fiscal year 2024, we funded 93 proposals through GRA. It's about $4.25 million in total. You see the breakdown between grants and loans. But something I'm really proud of is that we actually did this less than 50. Project comes in, they submit to us, we review, we go out and pressure test the idea. Every project is validated against its own metrics. We want to sort of understand, is there something there? If there is, we want to be the fastest way to get them money and get them moving forward. So again, we treat this as very friendly but industrial grade funding. We hold them to their milestones, we look at budget, we look at scope and team, but we do it all in a span of about 50 days. So the projects really do get capital in and they start to work right away. In addition to our financial resources, we also bring a network of experience, not only internally with our own I&E team. So I mentioned my background, but we have other scientists, other entrepreneurs inside the GRA system who've been in both private equity and venture capital, as well as early startup experience. But we also leverage that with a team of senior advisors. This is sort of a core of what we call private sector executives. I often joke that maybe these are folks that are bad at retirement and really looking for something to give back. But not unlike David, it's others who have found Atlanta as home and they've had successful exits or they want to give back and see Atlanta as a potential opportunity and really want to contribute back to the sector and help grow here inside the state. In addition, we also leverage our extensive network of key connections outside the Atlanta ecosystem. So we're not shy about going and contacting key opinion leaders, those with subject matter expertise to make sure that we have a third-party opinion, we have a second set of eyes on all of our projects, and really making sure that we're funding the things we want to fund and something that has real potential. All of this is provided to our university researchers and more importantly their trainees and the research administration professionals at the universities who help get these projects from the idea stage and on the bench through all of the negotiations of licensing and startups and all the things that it needs. It takes a village to get a concept from the bench to the market. So I want to tell you 3 quick stories about some GRA success. So a company called Micron Biomedical, launched out of Georgia Tech, founded by a professor named Mark Prausnitz. This company launched a concept that is a dissolvable microneedle. So those who may fear getting vaccines, because you don't like getting shots, this is an idea that you can actually load the vaccine or load something onto a patch. It looks like this. It goes right on your skin. Relatively pain-free. The provider pushes that button, and you can actually get the vaccine delivered without having to get a shot. It does a few things that are really interesting. So again, avoiding the concept of having needles, but it also removes a lot of the stipulation of having what we call cold chain. So vaccines have to be shipped in vials, they have to be kept refrigerated. If you actually manufacture them in these needles, all of that goes away. So not only does it help with the sort of fear of needles and pain aspect of it, but you now can deploy this and ship them across the world at a temperature stability, where they can serve underserved populations and increase shelf life. GRA was proud to support this company even from our earliest phase. So GRA was the first $25,000 that went into this project inside Georgia Tech. And as of earlier this year, they've raised almost $30 million in venture financing, and the commercial launch and FDA clearance is coming in 2027. Sticking with a little bit on the biotech side, and alluding back to what Tim said, is this really is a continuum. So GRA was able to recruit a faculty member to Emory University named Ami Klen. Ami came from Yale, so we were proud to pull him down from the Northeast. But Ami Klen is a researcher working in early diagnosis of autism. And so it's really challenging as children may become nonverbal. It's really important to diagnose these conditions as early as possible. And so Ami and his team developed a technology that's based on eye tracking. So as children interact and sort of they look at playing and do things like that, you can actually monitor where their eyes are looking to help diagnose early symptoms of autism before they're even able to speak. And so as early as 6 months, the early point technology can identify early stages of autism, which helps providers intervene a little bit earlier and has better outcomes for children. This invention was named a top invention by Time Magazine in 2024. Moving away from the life sciences a little bit, I want to tell you about Absolix. So Absolix, again, a GRA in 1993 was able to recruit Raul Tumala from IBM as a GRA eminent scholar at Georgia Tech. Raul came in, established a lab at Georgia Tech, and was able to compete and successfully win an NSF grant to sort of think about how semiconductors need to change over time. So if you're not familiar, semiconductors, this is everything that goes into all the chips that are in your devices. And one of the things that's really challenging is how do you do this at scale? And so as you scale and chips get smaller and they become higher in density, there's heat problems, there's all sorts of things that go in to increase sort of that technology. So what Raul Tumala's team was able to do is look at terms of making a glass substrate rather than traditional silicon. And so this increased the ability for chips to become increasingly dense, better power efficiency, and was able to bring in over $100 million in just research grants to the state of Georgia throughout his tenure. In 2022, Absolix broke ground on a manufacturing plant in Covington, Georgia, and so this is now bringing $600 million in investment and over 400 jobs to Georgia. So again, the theory of seed a technology, seed an investigator, keep them close, and it will bear fruit both for the state as well as the nation. So with that, I will thank the committee again for inviting us. Hopefully the GRA story resonates with many of you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the presentation. A few questions about the IP. So the IP is staying with the university that is conducting the research. So it's not transferring over to the particular startup. Is that my understanding? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so university IP, the IP does stay with the university. It's owned by the university. However, the startups license the IP out of the university. So there's not an ownership transfer, but the startups are designed to practice that IP. So it actually brings twofold. One, the university benefits because the IP is owned and there's a licensing agreement and there's revenue generated, and that ultimately gets paid back to the university. But the startup has the flexibility to license. They are free to then develop their own IP as well. But yes, the IP does stay with the university.
Then my second question is about the grants versus the loans. So who are you partnering with banks to underwrite the loans, and do you have sort of an average, even if it's not correct, average number for grants and average number in terms of dollars that you're awarding for grants versus loans?
So we don't partner with banks. So the funding we provide for grants and loans does directly come from the state. So we have a state appropriation every year. We don't have an earmark sort of speaking to a ratio that we give in grants versus loans. So we take what comes in, we review the proposals. I'd say on average, the grants far outnumber the loans. The companies that seek our loans come in, I'd say we do probably about $1 million in loans per year. And the balance of that, probably $2 to $3 million in grants.
And my last question is, do you have any policy proposals or anything that the state can do to get Georgia higher than number 8, even though that's a good number? Just looking for anything we can do to sort of go higher on that scale.
That's a great question, and maybe I can field that one. So yes, indeed. So these are the higher education and research and development through NSF is who captures those metrics and the rankings. So this is really R&D coming out of the universities. What Georgia has been arguably less competitive than we should be nationally compared to many of our peer institutions. I think what we have the opportunity is to start to win those awards. We need kind of a head coach, if you will, to make sure that the universities, which are absolutely stellar, from Emory, from privates and publics, you can imagine from the cutting edge healthcare to cutting edge engineering and technologies to cutting edge agriculture. How can we start to bring all of these assets together in not just an additive, but a synergistic fashion such that we would have, say, one proposal, an incredibly strong proposal that goes and competes against other states? What can happen sometimes here is we have such strong universities, we can have numerous proposals going on simultaneously, and they're not nearly as strong as they could be somewhat collectively. So I think there's a real opportunity for that. Some of those are for federal awards, some of those are for private awards, but there's been missed opportunities where I think many of us who are very familiar and close to the ground with this would say we should have been far more competitive, if not winning those, and we haven't. And so there's a real opportunity there.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I want to give you 4 questions. The first 2 from Representative Franklin, who's online, and then I'll give you 2 from me. The first one from Representative Franklin is, how do they choose, I guess, how does GRA choose the universities to partner with for basically, he noted the 8, but he also noted, and I can remind you that the speaker is adjacent to him in terms of districts, he also noted that Southern was not in that list. So he did wanted to know, how do you choose which partners in terms from a university perspective? The second one is, if a professor is selected to be a scholar, are they a scholar for life, or do they have to continue to meet certain performance benchmarks? Okay. And then from me, first of all, Dr. Denning, thank you for commenting on the head coach metaphor. I used the point guard metaphor, but I do think we are in dire need of that head coach, that point guard, because we keep losing to that state to the west of us that considers itself a republic. And I'm tired of losing to them. And I think the big reason we lose to them is we are not, I'll say, we're not consistent, and we're definitely not unified. And we look like we're all going north, but not we're all going due north. Texas does a really good job, which I hate to admit it, of making the feds feel very comfortable that they're all going due north. So thank you very much for commenting on that. My 2 questions, coming off of Representative Kendrick's question, I noted in the document you do about $1 million of loans and about $3 million of grants. Could you quickly give us a sense of, is it a committee that does that? Is it just your leadership group that does that? In other words, who makes a decision, who gets and who doesn't? That's number kind of 1A. 1B is, on the loan side, do we require a personal guarantee or anything to that effect? And then on the third, or 1C, would be, have we measured any type of, I saw with one company, obviously 600 million, that's a great number, but have we been able to look at an internal rate of return, return on investment, return on capital, whatever metric you may be using, have we looked at anything like that? So those would be my questions. So the 2 from Representative Franklin, and then the 2 from me, and that's about it.
Thank you for those questions. So I'll start out with the second one that you asked. The GRA Eminent Scholars are, we absolutely review them. We have not had any moment in time where we had any had to be removed, but we make sure not only are they continuing to produce at their superstar level in terms of publications, discoveries, but also really encouraging them to move forward into that translational space. So yes, there's not a formal annual review, if you will, but we make sure they're still performing at the highest levels. Many of them, when they are reaching a certain point in time where they're ready to say retire or step back, they're very well aware of the value of the endowment. And we've had numerous situations where they'll vacate that endowment to allow for the recruitment of a new superstar when they start to kind of slow down their engines a little bit in the later stages of their careers. Can you remind me of the very first question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Justin for the other. That was Mr. 8 university partners. Yes, thank you. So there were 6 original, so it was organic. When GRA was founded in 1990, 6 original members. About 10 years ago, 2 additional members came on that were Morehouse and Mercer, both kind of in the medical school space. What typically happens is when universities reach a certain point of R&D, really growing to a larger research engine, that's when close to an R1 status, that's when usually a conversation is initiated about membership into GRA. That all being said, even, again, beyond those 8 member institutions, any institution, university in the state of Georgia can benefit from what Justin described in terms of the grants to move that forward. You do not need to be a member institution to benefit from the grants. And then for some of the specifics about grants and loans, Justin can handle those. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll comment briefly. So the answer to your question about grants and loans and sort of the process, it's done by an internal committee, so led primarily by myself and members of the innovation and entrepreneurship team. We even have Tim join us. We review every proposal on its scientific merits. That includes both the technology basis, the foundational IP, the market, where we see hurdles, and so they're not sort of graded against one another, even if they come in the same week. We do value sort of the opportunity to review them on their merits. So that being said, we go out and seek additional feedback if we feel like we don't have domain expertise, if it's a technology we're not familiar with, if there's a market or somewhere we can go and see, do some customer discovery interviews, we do sort of validate that. So it is an internal decision, but we do leverage all the resources available to us to make those funding decisions. Your second question about tracking returns on the loan portfolio. So we do track returns. On the loan portfolios, you might imagine, these are very early companies. They're getting their first set of capital. So we track a few things in terms of metrics. One is their ability to raise capital and how much capital they may raise. It's also the number of jobs created. We actually track how many of those companies are still in existence a few years down the road. So every year we require our loan portfolio companies to sort of submit a survey. We actually start this at the grant phase. So even when it's still a project inside the university, we want to understand, what other grants were we able to get? How did our money help unlock additional capital? As far as a traditional sort of rate of return on investment, the loans are not designed to be a venture capital type investment. We're not looking for multiples here on that investment. We do track, of course, performance on the loans. We track if there's any default. We track, the ability to make payments. If the loan is going to convert, we have the flexibility to convert the loan into equity if they should raise capital and the investors don't want to just pay back the loan. It's not good to take capital out of the companies. So GRA does have that flexibility. So we do track a number of metrics, but I won't say that the loan portfolio is tracked in a way that's sort of similar to what a venture capital type investment would be.
One small favor, if you could, the committee, we have to get our report out rather quickly. If you could just get over to David, if you don't mind, we'd love to just see, hey, these loans went out, these were the terms. We would just like to understand, I think I speak for, we just want to understand, hey, here are the typical terms. It's a 3-year term, 5-year amortization. Here's the cost of capital. Whatever they are, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but we would just like to understand that. And the same thing with the grants. Hey, the average grant was this, just something to that effect so that we can just get a little more color. We don't have time, I know that, but if you could maybe get that out to David, I sure would appreciate it. Okay. Well, hey, thank you very much, Mr. Burns. Thank you very much, Dr. Denning. I sure do appreciate it. We ran a little further than we thought. We apologize that the tech committee, even though it's an Invest Georgia committee, had tech problems. For those of you who did not hear it, and the mic may not have been working, David Cummings did offer to fund you if you want to figure out a way to make the clicker work better. So he's right here. Make sure you talk to him about your brand new startup. We sure do appreciate coming. Thank you very much, David, to you and your entire staff for hosting us. We sure do appreciate it. Thank you, Representative Kendrick, for making this bill work, because without you, we wouldn't be here today. So we sure do appreciate everything, and thank you. Bye-bye.